talk to you a little bit about the Peaceful Press materials that we're using this summer. We are using the Kingdom for our fourth term, our summer term for my 8, 6, and 4-year-old. And the Kingdom is actually a full year literature-based curriculum that Jennifer Pepito designed for first grade through middle grade students. And it's a really rich curriculum that dives really deep into the Renaissance and World War II, some of the Holocaust. There's just amazing books included, and that's why we're doing it, because I could not handle missing out on this wonderful curriculum. And so because I want to do all the things, we are modifying it to suit a 10-week summer term, which I call our term 4. So here goes. I'm going to talk to you about how we've modified it, what we've done to work for us, and maybe you'll find pieces that will work for you. Before I get started, I just want to be clear that the Peaceful Press resources, the Playful Pioneers, the Kind Kingdom, and the Precious People are complete full year curriculums that have everything you need except for reading, / grammar and math. So while I'm modifying it for the summer, you could absolutely grab this curriculum and have a beautiful year of learning with a full, rich book list and just amazing experiences, projects. Jennifer Pepito has done an outstanding job with these. All right, so let's get to how we use them in our homeschool. We are doing the Kind Kingdom, which the spine is the Chronicles of Narnia books by C.S. Lewis. And so you go through these books in this, and the way Jennifer set it up is they're supposed to be done for a month, but instead of for a month, I actually do ours for 2 weeks, and that's how we're modifying it to suit the term that I'm doing in the summer months. So we prefer to do ours in published order. I went back and forth on it, but we decided to go with published order. Jennifer Pepito has written her guide in chronological order, which we might do one day, but for now we're gonna do it in published order, which is the way that I read it as a kid. And some people swear it's the only way to do it. I don't know that there's only one way to do things. There's always options. But if you have a guide from Jennifer, it is broken down really conveniently into months. And so like I said, I went through and I made beautiful plans. Who needs a guide? No, I'm just kidding. Her guide is so much more beautiful than what I did. And we've even spilled some water on ours. But let me talk to you about how I modified this. So what I did, the first thing that I did was I went through and wrote each book down and left some space in between. So we started with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And so I went to that in the book, which it's slotted for month 2. So I found month 2. And Jennifer has great organization in her resources. And so at the very first page, she gives you like a topic list of what's covered. And then she has her supplies and book lists listed. You can see them all here. So I just went through here and I said, okay, which books do I already own? Which books do we have? And I kind of made notes about that. And then which books do I feel like are really essential to what I want my children to pick up this summer while we're doing this learning? And so then I simply wrote them down. I didn't do every book. So if you look on here, what we're doing is she either has Grimm's fairy tales, and sometimes it's both, but Grimm's fairy tales or Shakespeare, I think. Yeah, it's one or the other. So sometimes you're reading from Grimm's fairy tales when you're doing a book, and sometimes you're reading from Shakespeare. So for Grimm's and Shakespeare, because she's covering a whole month and I'm just doing 2 weeks, I've written down the stories that I know I have in my collections, and then I'm just choosing one each time. So we're not doing them all. Like many times she's covering, 4 or 5 Grimm's or like 3 or 4 Shakespeare stories. And so I just wrote on my list the ones that I knew I had in my home, and then I kind of let the kids help me decide which one we were gonna read when we're studying that time. So we're still getting the richness, we're still getting exposure to great literature, we're just modifying to suit us. We're not reading every single thing. And my children are younger, so this you know, is really reasonable for an 8, 6, and 4-year-old. Like, how much Shakespeare do they need, you know? So I think getting a introduction to Shakespeare this way is really lovely, and we're having good conversations. So that's how I did that. Then I wrote down, like I said, the books that we already own and I knew I could pull out of our collection in our library, and I added in any I needed to purchase. And so if you look at my list, for each book, I just have my categories set up. And then the last thing that I considered was what projects we wanted to do. And so the way Jennifer does this, she has handcrafts and projects built in. It's really lovely. And that's actually one of the best things, in my opinion, about Jennifer's curriculums. Her living book lists, her book lists are impeccable. Some of the best around. I actually, when I'm coming up with my own things or wanting to extend a study for my kids, I go straight to Jennifer's book lists, because the Peaceful Press book lists are absolutely perfect. She screens the books so well, and they're just really great books. So, but the other thing that I love about Jennifer's curriculums are the handcrafts and the baking. They're all things that are naturally in the rhythms of our homeschool. So I love that they're in her guides. So I went to her guides and I found the baking and the projects and the games. And I just went through and I found the ones that were gonna work for us and for our rhythm. And I just chose a couple and I put them down. And then for each book, I have the BBC theater production, radio theater production CDs. So my kids, at nighttime, I'm reading them the book. And then in the morning they come down and they want to play the BBC theater version. So they get all excited and they pull out their castle and their knights. And then I actually have been showing them the BBC movies, which were like primarily like in the 80s and 90s, after we read the whole book. And then we have the big finale is like a feast that we do. And I have the 3 Disney versions. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, I think Prince Caspian, and maybe The Final Battle. I can't remember the third, but we will watch those. Those will be kind of like our big celebration. And so we already did one of those after The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We used the recipes from that month that correlate with that book in our feast. We had what we called a beaver's luncheon. So we baked the French bread that was in this curriculum, and then we put cold cuts out with it so the kids could make like a lunch in a hurry, you know, like they had to do when they left the Beaver Lodge. And then we made our Turkish delight. And so we are still using the things in the curriculum. We're primarily just not doing them as scheduled. We're kind of lumping things together. We're picking and choosing the books that are going to work for us. And really and truly, like, this is how I do most things. Like, I do not view curriculums as though they are like, I must check all the boxes. Instead, I consider my children, I consider where we are in our learning, I consider how much my children can sit for reading, what is going to make this beautiful and enticing and exciting and memorable for them. And we choose those parts. And I'm a big believer that that's how we should all do homeschool because that's how our families are gonna get the most. If you are a slave to a parent guide and you must check every box, I'm afraid that a lot of times we lose what would work best for our kids when we do that, because not everything works best for every child. Okay, so I've told you how I did the planning. It's literally that simple. We are also doing the poetry and the music. And there are memory verses, including in the morning time for the Kind Kingdom and also in the lesson plans. And I modified that entirely, so I'm going to show you what I did. It was just something quick and easy, but I created, we like to memorize like entire sections of scripture instead of one verse, and we usually do that over the course of a term. So I just chose this section of scripture. I put a cute castle and dragon because that pulls my kids in, and we've been working on this each day so that we can memorize it. And then the hymns that are listed in the Kind Kingdom curriculum, I am choosing whichever one we want to do. I don't think we're doing as many as are suggested. I would have to go back and look, but we are using the ones that are in there. We just might not be using all of them. And so I just have them on my clipboard and in my children's morning menus, and we are going through the hymns together, and we just do them each morning. We sing, we get out our little instruments, and we do the hymn. I like to print them off if they're available from Happy Hymnody. I just like the way it's free, and she usually has like a little picture, and she also has the sheet music. So if you can accompany, it's nice to have. And you can go on YouTube, and her children or another family with their kids play the music and sing it, and it seems to work well for our family. So in the Kind Kingdom, there's a lot of classic artwork, and we're not going to be able to get to it all. So instead, I have selected one piece of art from each book. So in a month, she would expose the children to multiple pieces, but because we're doing this in 2 weeks, I'm exposing my kids to one. So we are selecting what will work for us. We are using books that correlate with that. So this was the first one we did. Here's our second one that we'll do next week. And then I was gonna show you, so there's poetry in the Kind Kingdom. I mean, Jennifer has really hit all of the, just perfect parts of a Charlotte Mason inspired curriculum and classical education. She just ties it in so beautifully. But when we read the poems, my children have a poetry journal, and I just do a cold read. I don't actually introduce or give the history of the poem. I simply read the title, read the name of the author, and then I read the poem. And while I read the poem, they begin to illustrate the poem. And this is just something actually I learned from Modern Miss Mason. It's about visualization, and it's just a great tool and a way to help them process and narrate poetry. So this is my son's poetry journal, and he will illustrate while I read the poem, and then he will tell me his favorite line and copy it. My 8-year-old will copy it in. My 6-year-old, I will copy it in for him. And that's how we do the poetry section. And then when we introduce our hymn, we use this book. This is just a classic in our homeschool. Highly, highly recommend this one. It has a brief biography of how the hymn started and who wrote it and why, and it's just really great information, and it's usually just one page, so even your littles can read it, but it's great to be exposed to why these were written and kind of the heartbeat behind it and the circumstances. And then in our morning time, we are also including this, which is not part of the Kind Kingdom materials. It's just something we've thrown in. And we're literally just going through this story by story. So we're 5 stories in. We just read one each morning, and it has a little bit of discussion questions. I have the boys narrate, but these are pretty much takes you through the whole Bible with beautiful illustrations. It's called the Gospel Story Bible. Really well done. So when it comes to the Kind Kingdom and how we've modified for a summer term, that's pretty much it. Essentially, we took the books that we already owned and then a couple additional books from each month, and we grabbed the ones we felt would suit our family best. We're picking and choosing the projects that will work for us, and we are omitting the grammar and the written work. We're not using the student packs that require the children to do spelling words and copy work, because this is our summer term and we're a lot more lighthearted with it. I wanted to show you one other thing that we have purchased to go along with this, just because my boys have enjoyed it so much. I believe this is from Elizabeth Wade Studios, and it is a map of Narnia. My 6-year-old is making his own version of this. So anyway, there it is. A couple things I wanted to just mention is that pretty much everything we are doing for the Kind Kingdom fits in our morning time each morning. So while my kids are eating breakfast, we read the one picture book, or we do our picture study. I do it in a beauty loop rotation, so if I introduce the picture study that day, I'm not reading a poem. The next day I would do a poem. And then since I've already done picture study and poem, then like the next day I would introduce our hymn and read the little biography. So it's like you loop around. Once you've done all the things in your beauty loop, then you'll begin back again at the beginning. And I filter in our Grimm's fairy tales or Shakespeare, all of that into our morning time, so that really the only thing that they do outside of morning time is like the fun stuff like baking or watching a movie or maybe one of the projects, but they're usually super into it and it definitely doesn't feel like a lesson time. So if you have any questions, you can ask me. I'm available on Kindle Togetherness on Instagram, or you can ask me if you're watching this on YouTube. You can ask me in the comment box below and I will try and get with you. I do have an affiliate link for the Peaceful Press. Like I said, I've been a huge fan of the Peaceful Press for several years. I have used their preschool curriculum twice. I have used some of their nature, their monthly nature guides. I have used the Playful Pioneers, and now we're working our way through the Kind Kingdom in this modified format. So I would love if you decide to purchase a Peaceful Press curriculum for you to use the link that I have. And again, if you have any questions, I would love to answer for you. So thanks for watching. Happy homeschool.